Well, George Powell is a freelance journalist in Brazil. He joins us now from Rio, and it's good to talk to you tonight. A very big effort to curtail those suggesting this impeachment amounted to no more than a coup d'etat.
Indeed. It's certainly that Rousseff and her supporters have been claiming this is a coup. How can you replace one government with another government without an election in between, especially when you consider that Rousseff's party was a centre-left party and Michel Temer has now aligned himself with a right-wing party. On the other hand, interesting development yesterday. After Rousseff was impeached, those very same senators opted to allow Dilma Rousseff to remain active in Brazilian politics, not to bar her. So in fact, she may well be running again in 2 years' time. One of the reasons that these senators may have opted to do this is that as they themselves are also being investigated for a whole wide range of issues, they're hoping that if they suffer a similar fate to Rousseff down the line, they'll be offered the same kind of political immunity that she has in being able to stay active in Brazilian politics.
That's an interesting explanation of it, George, because it was quite surprising to see that, given the vehemence with which they've pursued Dilma Rousseff. But to your point about the number of senators and politicians who have been so tainted by similar scandals and deep corruption within Brazil, it does make you wonder how they're going to pick up the pieces of this.
Absolutely. I mean, the number of, it was somewhere between 60 and 70% of the MPs that first voted for this impeachment process to get starting are being investigated for some sort of crime. That's ranging all the way from tax evasion right the way down to things like bribery, extortion, and even torture. So Brazilian politics has taken a huge knock at the moment. I think many are hoping now that this political stalemate is over, and that's certainly what Michel Temer will be trying to reassure the world when he heads to China for the G20 in a few days' time.
So what is the chances of Michel Temer being able to stabilise this country and turn around its economic fortunes?
Well, Michel Temer has taken over at a point where Brazil is suffering from massive deficit and also the worst recession, about to enter their third year of consecutive recession. So he's certainly got his work cut out for him. At a post-inauguration speech yesterday, Temer said that his number one priority was getting the economy back on track and lowering unemployment. So he's set up a number of risky economic policies. The Rousseff and her supporters, however, claim that this conservative government will simply mean austerity measures and a cut to the social programs that the Workers' Party had put in place over the past 13 years. So it's going to be a very interesting time over the next 2.5 years that Temer is in power here in Brazil.
And George, what do you make of the fallout from some of Brazil's neighbours, Venezuela? They've both recalled each other's ambassadors. The Bolivian and Ecuadorian envoys have also been ordered home. Is that going to trouble Brazil at all?
Well, yeah, I think there's something like 7 Latin American countries now that have refused to acknowledge this new president. I mean, I think with Michel Temer and his government, he's going to be looking much more towards the United States and kind of leaving Latin America behind in a way. So I'm not sure how concerned he will be, although I think it should be a very worrying issue that your neighbouring countries refusing to recognise you as a government and indeed pulling out their diplomats from the country.
And what are people talking about in terms of Dilma Rousseff? What might happen to her, whether she's going to want to dip her toe back into politics?
Well, this is a really tough woman. Before she was president, she was a guerrilla Marxist fighter who was tortured at length by the military dictatorship. She still has the scars to prove it. So she's a pretty tough lady. I don't think, though, that she'll be running again in 2 years' time. Her popularity and indeed her credibility has taken a bit of a knock over these past 20 months. What's more likely, though, is that her mentor, President Lula, who was the president prior to her, he may well come back and run again, which I think the supporters of Michel Temer will be extremely worried about, because his popularity has remained reasonably strong throughout this whole ordeal.
Yes. All right, George, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.